So you guys kind of just shared with me kind of why you went into this particular program. Let me share a little bit from my perspective. So why Exit Lifestyle? So when I thought about why is it that people start businesses, and as you guys all know, everybody at Cultivates owned their own business for at least 10 years in the past. I own a mortgage company that rode the refi wave up and then went through the housing crisis and bubble. I owned a financial services company, went through 08, 09. And last 14 years prior to joining Cultivate, my financial services business, we did what's called advanced planning, which is just tax reduction, asset protection, wealth transfer, exit planning, partnering with other professionals, typically wealth managers, and working with them to help their clients figure out a game plan along the lines of what we're talking about now. What I learned was that regardless of how many commas or how many zeros someone had in their revenue line or in their personal income line, the challenges were the same across the board. I had a client that had an $80 million business, lived a multi-million-dollar lifestyle, and was tied to his business like he had a leash, and he couldn't get away. He eventually figured that out. And then obviously we at Cultivate work with businesses much smaller than that. And so it's a common thread. So I think that when people think about going out on their own and taking that risk, it all boils down to not just the reasons you guys gave, but if I had to give one word for it, I'd say it's freedom. Yeah, you want the freedom to do it your way. You want the freedom to innovate. You want the freedom to kind of create the outcomes that you want in your life. And when I was thinking about that, this has been a kind of just a philosophy in my brain for a while. And I was thinking about, well, how would I actually execute against that? If I'm honest that this is the philosophy I think is the right way, how would I create a framework that we could actually execute against? And so I think it's three main areas. You have business freedom, financial freedom, and personal freedom. So business freedom, I would define as just you have a business that gives you the amount of time and money that you want. Let's just all agree that doing great work, making an impact on your clients, all that kind of stuff is just table stakes. If you're not doing that, you're not in business, or you won't be in business for long. So, once you've figured that out, then it's about, well, how do I turn this business into an asset for me? So I don't feel like I own a job, but I actually have a business and not a practice. So it can run without me. I heard that as a common theme across many people's comments earlier. And so when we're doing that, when we're creating that business freedom, so time and money, then the idea is, well, how do we take with an eye towards the future and start taking a little bit of that time, a little bit of that money, and redirecting it to other resources, other assets, other income streams that are not tied directly to your core operating business. This is one of the big things that kills people's ability to transition in the future, is that they are kind of held hostage by somebody with a checkbook. And if you're in that position that you need to exit for some reason, and you don't have a lot of resources separate from the business, you might find yourself being forced to accept a deal that you didn't really want. And so, getting to that, how do I duplicate my income streams so I can protect my family better along the way and give myself many more options later, hopefully on my terms and my timeline. But the objective here is that exit planning, the biggest disservice that I think the financial services industry, of which I was part of, did for business owners, is that we made the exit all about the transaction. And therefore, many owners then were thinking, I don't need to worry about it until I'm thinking about retirement, or I'm getting close to wanting to have a transaction or a transition. When the truth is, it's not about getting you and your money out of this business at some point in the future. It's about getting what you want out of your business starting right now. And then the third freedom is personal freedom. So, running a business, being an entrepreneur is hard work. And as your businesses grow, it doesn't get easier, but you have to get stronger as a leader, as a business person, to make it work. And so there's only so much of hashtag grind, burning the candle at both ends that will work before you end up kind of burning the whole thing down. So, like they say, when you're on an airplane, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help anybody else. That's where I think personal freedom comes in. You know, are you spending time to create a life separate from your business that you find inspiring, so that 100% of your time and attention isn't just about, crushing it at work. As much as we all love what we do, there has to be something else. The These are all the things that end up killing deals later, even if you do everything right. So we specifically want to add these in. So my whole thesis is that, can we create the exit lifestyle that you want without ever selling or without a transaction? And in doing so, give you way more options, make you way more attractive for somebody to potentially acquire you or to do some type of a transaction in the future. So I just open this up to general discussion on anybody's comments or thoughts around that. Creating that exit lifestyle is a way of kind of framing up the work that we're doing to build a business that's a true asset that serves us not just in business, but also in our personal finances and in our lives separate from business. Anybody have something they'd like to kind of either comment or share on that? Or maybe exit lifestyle means something slightly different to you?
I'll share something just because you kind of touched me. When I started this business, I had a 5-year goal that business had to be at a certain point. It had to be run in a certain way. And I didn't want to sell it. And somewhere along the way, I've kind of forgotten that part. And as you said, you have to become a better leader. So as the business grew, it's taken more and more time back out of my time. And until you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I have lost that focus. And I think the exit strategy is what I'm looking for, is something that I don't want to have to sell and I can have it working for me. So I like that idea.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jake. I think we all get stuck into some version of someday I'll, right? Like, when I hit this revenue number, when I hit this personal income number, whatever the milestone is, then I'll be able to start enjoying life the way that I've envisioned it, you know? So anybody else have something that they want to share?
There's one thing I'll share is fundamentally for us, maybe 2-3 years ago, started focusing a lot more on one of the main things that makes us stable, which is monthly recurring revenue. So we'd be doing the same services, let's say, for a company, but originally we were very focused on just doing more stuff, like being busier, getting out there more, which I'm sure a lot of more jobs, more projects, so to speak. But we can do the same work, but with a eye on the monthly recurrence of it, of keeping things up and running and doing the backups and supporting them on a monthly plan. And that's really changed everything for us. So I think that's given me the opportunity to do more things like this that we're talking about today, is making the business more stable. So for us, it was sort of a shift fundamentally in how we do what we do, not on a project basis, but on a monthly recurring basis. So I imagine that will help us to create, or help me to create, a exit lifestyle sort of mentality here.
Yeah, totally, Meet. I love that. Yeah, we'll get into that later on in the curriculum, but yeah, not all revenue is created equal. Obviously, recurring revenue is way more valuable to you as well as it is to somebody else who might be thinking about buying your company.
Yeah,
So,
and it gets us out of the sort of scramble mode of eating what you kill, and
mhm.
it much more creates a much better basis to give employees raises, to do nicer things at the office, and everything, right? It makes it a more stable business.
Yeah, and there's lots, and we'll get into that where we'll talk about different ways that how can you create a version of recurring revenue for your business. Most businesses can get to some version of it. A final comment from anybody?
Greg, I'd like to say something. You
Yeah.
said something that kind of struck a chord with me, where you said Exit Lifestyle is about creating a company, creating the business that you want,
Mhm.
right? It's not necessarily about exiting. And if I'm being totally transparent, a lot of our motivations for wanting to exit are tied to stress. Like one of my business partners, he's still in the day-to-day operations of the business, and he wants to exit because he doesn't want to do that anymore. We haven't figured out how to get him out of that role. And will exiting really solve that problem? Or can we try to figure out how to restructure the business to solve that core issue? You know, same thing for me. Like I'm not in the day-to-day operations, but I'm managing all the revenue, and we have a lot of ups and downs because of just how the industry works. And
Yeah.
how can I figure out how to level off that revenue so that it's more R&R, like Amit was saying, you know, and how that could possibly change our mind about exiting if we just could take a back seat and it was a little bit more easier to manage. So
Yeah, a
I
little more
think,
predictable.
yeah, and I think it's more about like looking at the motivations as opposed to just I want out, you know, how can I make this business what I want it to? So I thought that was kind of an interesting.
Yeah, I love your insight. The truth is, if you have a lot of stress inside that business, you know, the likelihood of somebody else wanting to buy that away from you for any kind of meaningful money is probably low, unless you have some really strategic asset inside the business that makes a lot of sense, and their systems can solve your stress, but they get your asset by doing it. So it's a perfect transition. You know, why do you guys think that most exits fail?
Because they're reactive.
Most businesses are simply not valuable to acquirers.
That's a good point.
Like if today Ivan and I decide to sell, there will probably be no buyer.
Yeah.
It's just-
Limited amount of funds want to be directed to buying a job.
Right, exactly. It would be buying a stressful job of two guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Yeah, I would say like a different way of saying what Sasha said is probably just, you know, it's owner dependent. So there's really not, it's really not a running business, so to speak, as much as people like, you know, owners doing what they want to do, and there's a business as a side effect.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, if you wanted the real back of the napkin way to know how, if your business had a lot of value, just think about how dependent it is on you. And if you're still heavily involved in a lot of stuff, then probably not as valuable. And if you could take a year off at some point in the future with some limited involvement, probably more valuable.